The coffee cup trembled ever so slightly as the man in the tailored gray suit lifted it, expecting nothing more than his usual bitter espresso. But instead, something thin, something desperate, something almost trembling, slipped from beneath it and fluttered onto the polished wooden table like a wounded bird. His brow tightened, his breath paused midway, because in that moment he knew, before he even picked it up, that this wasn't an ordinary note. It was a plea, a cry, a message written by someone clinging to the last thread of hope. And when he finally unfolded the tiny scrap of paper, the three shaky words staring back at him pierced more sharply than any blade. "Please help me." Before we go deeper into this powerful story, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that even a small gesture can change a life. The man who had discovered the note was Adrian Hale, a CEO known across the city for his cold precision, the silent intensity in his eyes, and his reputation for being allergic to distraction. He was the type of leader employees feared but respected, the type the media portrayed as emotionless, the type who built his empire on discipline and walls of steel around his heart. But none of that mattered in this moment, because as he looked around the nearly empty cafe, searching for the one person who could have left that note, the walls he had built felt suddenly thin, vulnerable, breakable. She stood behind the counter, wiping a mug with hands that didn't stop shaking even when she thought no one was watching. Her uniform was clean but worn. Her shoulders were too tense for someone working in a place scented with warm pastries and cinnamon. Her eyes avoided his every time he glanced at her, as if she feared eye contact would get her in trouble. And beneath that forced calm, beneath that hollow smile she gave customers, something was painfully wrong. Adrian didn't know her name yet, but he knew fear when he saw it. He had lived through it once, long ago, and no amount of success in the world could erase the familiarity of that expression. He stared at the note again. 3 words, light pencil marks, handwriting uneven, rushed, not the kind of message someone leaves unless they're out of options. He remembered too clearly the moments in his own childhood when he wished a stranger would notice something was off, when he hoped someone, anyone, would catch his silent plea. He walked away from those years, but the scars remained pressed into the back of his soul like fingerprints of memory. The waitress, her name tag said Maya, passed by him with a tray, her eyes flickering with the faintest spark of hope before she quickly hid it. It was subtle, invisible to most, but not to Adrian. He waited until she walked away, then quietly observed the details. The bruise, partially hidden beneath makeup, the stiff movements, the way she flinched every time her phone buzzed in her apron. Something heavy was crushing her spirit, and she was suffocating silently behind the counter while the world continued sipping coffee around her. Adrian rose from his seat, pretending to stretch. His presence alone was enough to draw a timid glance from Maya. She looked scared that he had seen the note, but more scared that he might ignore it. She swallowed hard and forced a weak, brittle smile. It wasn't enough to fool him. He casually drifted toward the counter with a calmness that didn't match the storm brewing inside him. He ordered a refill he didn't need, using his presence as a protective shield. When she leaned slightly closer to hand him the cup, he murmured low enough that only she could hear, "Are you in danger?" Her breath hitched, but she didn't look up. She didn't dare. Instead, her fingers trembled just enough to betray the truth. He understood. She couldn't speak, couldn't risk being overheard, couldn't risk being wrong. He stepped back, sat down, and observed quietly, strategically, methodically. Traits that had built his company from the ground up. Every few minutes she checked her phone with dread. Every time the door opened, she stiffened like prey listening for a predator. Something or someone had her trapped. When a large man walked into the cafe, Maya's entire body froze. Her face paled, her breathing quickened, and Adrian saw fear coil around her like a tightening rope. The man scanned the room with an angry impatience, eyes sharp and hunting. Adrian's instincts sharpened instantly, like a blade scraped against stone. He looked like someone used to intimidation, someone used to control, someone who believed Maya belonged to him. She tried to slip away to the back, but the man thundered toward the counter and slammed his hand down hard enough to make the salt shaker jump. Maya flinched visibly. He spoke in a low, threatening tone, something only she could hear, but the menace in his posture was loud enough to fill the entire cafe. She nodded rapidly, apologizing in a whisper he couldn't hear, but her fearful posture said enough. Adrian watched everything, quietly, calculatingly, methodically. Traits that had built his company from the ground up. He recognized the man's dominance, the warning stares, the clenched fists. This wasn't a lover's quarrel. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was control, possession, abuse. The man stormed out eventually, but the imprint of his presence lingered like a dark stain in the air. Maya sagged slightly, as if her bones finally felt the weight of holding herself together for too long. Adrian knew the moment the man walked away that the note wasn't just a cry for help, it was a lifeline thrown by someone drowning. He leaned forward, then motioned for her to come near with the warmest, calmest smile he could manage, an expression he rarely used. When she approached, he whispered, "I can help you, but only if you want me to." Her lips parted, trembling with both fear and longing. And then, without a word, a single tear slipped down her cheek before she quickly wiped it away and shook her head, not in refusal, but in terror of being caught acknowledging the truth. Adrian didn't push. He simply nodded, signaling that he understood her silent yes. From that moment on, he stayed. He sat in the corner like any other customer, but his presence shifted the energy in the cafe. Maya kept glancing at him, not in fear, but in fragile relief, as though he was the first safe thing she had seen in years. Hours passed. The sky outside darkened, and then the man returned. Not with anger this time, but with a creeping suspicion. He scanned the cafe, his eyes landing on Adrian. Something about seeing another man lingering, watching, waiting, triggered him. His jaw twisted. Adrian straightened, meeting the man's stare with a calm that was colder, harder, and far more dangerous than aggression. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone, silent confidence sharpened with purpose, sent a clear warning. The man stepped closer, chest puffed, but Adrian remained seated, steady, unmoved, a storm suppressed behind stillness. When the man tried to reach over the counter to grab Maya's wrist, Adrian rose, slowly, like a towering shadow. The man paused mid-motion, startled by the sudden closeness of someone who clearly wasn't afraid of him. Adrian's voice was quiet but firm. "She's working. Step back." The cafe fell silent. Maya's breath caught. A few customers turned to look, sensing tension but not understanding its depth. The man clenched his fist. "Who the hell are you?" Adrian's eyes never wavered. "Someone who's not leaving her alone." The man scoffed, but his bravado cracked. He left with a threat thrown over his shoulder, but the glare he shot at Maya was enough to make her shrink behind the counter. Adrian didn't sit again. He stood there, protective and unwavering, until Maya finally whispered with trembling resolve, "I can't go home." That confession shattered something inside him. He nodded. "Then you won't." Her relief was heartbreaking. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. The kind of relief that comes from someone who hasn't felt safe in a long, long time. He called the driver he trusted and walked out with Maya a few steps behind him. She kept checking over her shoulder, terrified the man would reappear. Adrian stayed close without crowding her, offering safety without pressure, protection without demand. He took her to a secure place, one of his company's private lodging spaces used for traveling employees, a place with cameras, controlled access, and 24-hour security. He didn't ask for details, didn't push for her story. He knew victims rarely speak until they feel safe enough to breathe. Over the next days, Maya slowly unraveled her truth. The man was her ex-boyfriend, someone who refused to let go, someone who had taken everything from her, her savings, her sense of security, her courage. She had no family left, no one to take her in, and nowhere to run except her job, which had become the last place she could breathe. Adrian listened, really listened, and with every detail she revealed, he felt a deep ache in the same part of his soul that once knew helplessness. He used his network, his resources, and his influence, not to control her, but to free her. He helped her file a restraining order, enlisted legal aid, ensured she had safe housing, and arranged counseling with a professional who specialized in trauma. And although he never intended to be anything more than a helper in her life, something shifted between them naturally, gently. Not romance, not yet, but trust. Something fragile but meaningful, something life-changing. Maya regained her smile slowly, then her laughter, then her confidence. She enrolled in night classes, applied for better jobs, began building a life that was hers, not dictated by fear, but shaped by freedom. And Adrian, who once believed kindness made people weak, realized something life-altering. Helping her didn't soften him, it strengthened him. It healed old wounds he had never addressed. It gave him purpose beyond boardrooms and success. Months later, Maya stood outside the cafe where everything had started. She held a new phone, new documents, a new life. But when she looked through the window and saw the table where she had placed that tiny note, the memory made her eyes fill with tears. Not from pain this time, but from gratitude that someone had listened to her silent cry. Near the end of their time talking, she told him softly, "You didn't just help me, you saved me." He didn't answer with words. He just smiled, a real, warm smile, something rare for him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt proud, not of what he had built, but of who he had become. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support means more than you know and helps spread stories that inspire compassion and courage.